everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Starting the School Year STEM Strong. If you want to get your CE certificate for this webinar, as an edWeb member, your personalized certificate will be posted to your home page by the end of the next business day. If you've logged in with your email address, we'll email you links to get a CE certificate form, the recording, and how to get added resources. You only have to take the CE quiz if you've dialed in by phone, or if you're watching as a group, or viewing this as a recording. And don't forget, if you haven't already joined our Leadership 3.0 community, make sure you join. There's a lot of great benefits, including edWebinar recordings, quizzes for the CE certificates. You can download slides and chat logs and join online discussions, and of course, get a lot more great resources. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter today. We're really excited to have David here, who is the Director of Curriculum and Reporting at Dreambox Learning. He earned his BA in elementary education with endorsements in reading and middle-level mathematics with a minor in Spanish from Whitworth University, and he also holds a master's degree in integrating technology in the classroom from Walden University before he joined the Dreambox curriculum team. Throughout his teaching career, David reviewed a lot of new curriculum, interpreted assessment data, and was a leading member of his professional learning community of math teachers. For the last 6 years, he's been a curriculum designer at Dreambox Learning, where he is currently serving as the Director of Curriculum and Reporting, and he can apply his passion for building an effective, individualized math curriculum. So we're so excited to have you all here today to join us, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to David.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited that you took the time out of your busy schedules as the school year starts up. I have a lot of empathy for the educators trying to get those classrooms going and the rosters set, so that the school year can start off really strong. Some of the goals today around the STEM presentation is to really talk about how we look at the future in the demands around the job market, what we're trying to prepare students to succeed, how we can empower students in that deep conceptual understanding. So I want to get into like why STEM or STEAM, as that is picking up traction. You know, integrating the arts is also a critical component. So we'll talk about why STEM is important, some of the challenges that we see in today's data, and the opportunities that are set out in the future. We'll talk about building a STEM mindset for inside your culture, inside the schools, and go over some strategies for how to develop a deeper math learning with technology and how that can fit inside the classroom. And then talk about a little bit preparing and supporting educators to teach with confidence in math, specifically around the STEM initiatives. So yeah, let's jump right in. If you have questions, throw them up on the chat and we'll see what we can address. So let's start with what is STEM. Experts generally talk about STEM as how workers use their knowledge of science, technology, engineering, or math to try to understand how the world works and how to solve problems. Their work often involves the use of computers and technology and other tools. So, you know, we're talking about computer science, architecture, engineering, and you really see this trickling across into other fields, like when we're talking about AR and VR, even all the way into agriculture, right? Like there's a lot of STEM that's involved with making systems more efficient and identifying how we can improve the different fields that people work in. So some fields are closely related and they build on each other. Math is the foundation for physics, and in turn engineering. Engineers can apply their knowledge of physics and math. There's a deep integration between these fields. So when we're talking about the future, right? So the future of the economy is STEM. It is when we look at the job market, projected percentage increases in STEM jobs from 2010 to 2020. It is growing rapidly. That projection has deep implications not only at a local level, but at a global level. Like, how are we preparing our students to be citizens in a workforce that is going to demand a deep integration and understanding of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So 60% of new jobs created this century are going to require skills in STEM-related fields. I had an opportunity to hear a leader in Michigan speak about the jobs that our second graders, when they're in the workforce, the jobs that they need to prepare for aren't even created yet. And that creates a tremendous challenge for educators to prepare our students, our citizens, for a workforce that hasn't even been created yet. So here are some of the challenges with that we're facing today. The low scores in mathematics have been persistent. The NAEP data. In the graphic, the NAEP data has flatlined. This is the latest since 2017. And you can see that we haven't made a lot of gains in 2017. Yeah, some people are if you're not able to hear or see the screen, go ahead and put something in the chat and we'll see if someone can work on that with those people. So why is it so important? Well, we have two major challenges ahead of us in the math education world. One is the low math scores, and the second is the confidence and the attitudes towards math. Math achievement in the U.S. has been consistently low for decades, with only 40% of the students in grade 4 and 33% of the students in grade 8 performing at proficient levels. That was according to the 2015 NAEP data. But even more telling is that between 4th and 8th grade, the number of children reporting positive attitudes about math drops from 71% to 48%. And so we are losing the interest in the minds and hearts of our students in persisting and persevering around STEM. And when we match that up with what the workforce and the economy is going to be demanding, that creates some problems. Here's a graphic that shows a relationship between if a student is strong in math, they feel positive about it, and if they're low in math, they feel negative about it. And it's an interesting data point to discuss because math anxiety is a real issue. We need to be working intentionally, designing our classrooms and our math culture around really breaking down that anxiety. So 3 critical components of a STEM classroom. This is the ways that you can start the school year off strong, STEM strong. When I graduated from college, I got the opportunity for someone to come and speak, and he talked about critical attributes. He talked about critical attributes being the thing that makes the thing the thing. And that has always resonated with me when I'm trying to identify the most important thing to surface or discuss. So these are 3 critical attributes or components of a STEM classroom. 1, we're going to talk about what a strong math culture looks like. 2, how we can increase deeper learning opportunities. And then 3, how we can leverage our professional development resources to really maximize that STEM classroom. So let's start off with building a culture around an academic or growth mindset. The first thing we want to think about is how we build a math culture in our classrooms that supports STEM. Math culture and math growth mindset can be synonymous. They can be utilized in individual classrooms throughout the entire schools and districts, and they are the place where the shift begins. Everything starts with the student and how we shift the culture the student is embedded in. So become the advocate and leader within your classroom, school, and district. It's much easier to implement from the start of the year, which is why we really wanted to jump on this topic in August to establish that culture. And we wanted to broaden the conversation to share stories around diverse groups of people. So one strategy to start the conversation is to exemplify the contributions of a diverse set of people from the STEM fields. In here is included a quote from Katherine Johnson, a NASA mathematician, and also Thomas Edison, an American inventor. We want to talk about the triumphs, the overcoming of adversity, the achievement that people of different races, ethnicities, and genders have on the STEM communities. This is an important topic for our students to see rich diversity that can be found in the STEM fields. Now, when we're talking about in the classroom, one thing I like to say, what gets measured gets discussed. When we are measuring student proficiency and standards, most of the time that is the conversation that we would have in our PLCs. How can we get the students to understand adding and subtracting unlike fractions? And that's because the assessments were designed to assess that. So risk-taking strategies is a critical component of a strong math culture, and here are 4 ways that you can try to measure and look for this in your classrooms and in your culture. And if we work from the foundation of what gets measured gets discussed, then you can start to plan some of these proposed changes and implement some strategies. So a classroom that promotes obedience is going to have students speak up in class when they know the answer only. And we want to encourage risk. In turn, try to measure students, the amount of times the student speaks up in class when they have a question or they have an observation, they have an idea. We want students to feel like they are a critical component of this journey in the classrooms, and that we are there to facilitate and guide them to that. Students are passive versus students are explicitly encouraged and supported to take risks. How many times in a class or during a week do we take the opportunity to explicitly encourage our students to take risks and celebrate when they do take risks? And that's what we're measuring. Students are teased or humiliated when they are confused or make mistakes. This is done not intentionally 99% of the time. Sometimes this can be conflated with a strong culture, being able to laugh when at a student or with a student. But we should capture or measure how many times that happens. And actually, we should instead encourage when they're confused or make mistakes. Avoid sarcasm or humiliation, and never tease students about their thinking. We have seen this in classrooms with the best intentions, but it still is a demotivator for students. And then the 4th thing is around smart and easy are common words. And speed and accuracy are overvalued. Instead, we want to convert our students from saying, that was easy, or, man, you did that really fast. That gets conflated with being proficient in math, when actually challenge and try should be common words. It's understood that doing good math takes time. Math is messy. Mistakes are the first step towards success. If students are only ever experiencing accuracy and speed, then they're probably not being challenged at the level that they're at. And we should question that a little bit and see how we can put them in situations that are similar but unfamiliar to see if they can apply the logic and thinking. So here are some strategies to transform your culture. Let's empower why questions, focus on conceptual understanding. We want to see students being curious about learning, why something works. A lot of this that I'm pulling from comes from Tracy Zager's work of becoming the math teacher you wish you'd had. And she has a great story about when she was in a class, and the questions she wanted to ask her teacher all the time was, well, why does that work? And wanted to get more information about that. We need students to be thinking about why things work, not just receivers of information on how to do something. Because if we relate it back to those original slides, we don't need more computers and computations. We're going to have plenty of those. We need more thinkers and questioning. We want to engineer learning opportunities. So when we are designing lessons, we want to be intentional with the numbers and the context. Number strings are a great way to help guide a student to an understanding. Number strings, now they are different from number talks and number corners. Number strings are an example. You can look up numberstrings.com for some examples. But as an example, if I wanted to work with a student on partial products, I might start with a number string of 5 times 7, and then work with the student or a group of students. We'd model it in an array, or maybe it's a group of dots. And then we might do 5 times 10, and then I might present them 5 times 17. and see if we can work their way through that relationship of adding the 5 times 7 plus the 5 times 10 to equal 5 times 17. So it's a quick example of how we can be very intentional with numbers in our context. Listening to understand instead of listening to respond. Allow time for explanation. And we've heard, questioning time, the time of questioning and how much time should you give between asking the question, how silent it is. That definitely is some flexibility in there for you to read your own students and know them individually, but we want to allow that time for explanation. When a student is moving away from the desired outcome, we want to be prepared with questioning to reverse the course. We don't want to take over the course, right? We want to guide them back into it. And the way that we do that is try to understand what they're thinking and where they're at on that learning pathway, and then shift and redirect them. Student-centered dialogue. We should try to avoid monopolizing the knowledge and the dialogue in the classroom. We need to use dialogue to engage the learner. When you do a measurement of your own experiences or lessons that you're performing in the class, maybe ask someone in your PLC to come do a timing. One row is how much the teacher is talking, and the second data point is how much the student is talking, and then look at that ratio. If we're monopolizing the conversation and the dialogue, then the students aren't doing as much of the thinking as we would like to engage them in. And then last, facilitate meaningful discussion. So engage them, between peers, focused on mathematics between peers, collaboration is essential to a successful future in any field. One example of this is that we share is when you think about mathematicians, they don't just sit in a room, solve a problem, and move on. They will solve a problem, show their evidence, and then they're going to get back with other mathematicians and have them check it and question it, see how they're thinking about it. It's a collaborative community. Again, math is not something that is supposed to be done in isolation through drill and kill practice worksheets. It's intended, its beauty is in collaboration and communication and working together to find new, interesting, and big ideas. Okay, so let's move on to strategies to support a deeper math learning and how technology can play a part in that. So leveraging technology to empower deeper learning, the 6 competencies, this comes from the 6 strategies to help your students become algebra ready. And how this breaks down is around critical thinking and problem solving. We'll just start with that one. We want to, it's essential in anything with STEM, right? So even if you think back to the original definition of not of just science, technology, engineering, math, we want to tackle problems creatively and critically think about them. So one strategy is to empower students to design or invent their own solutions. And another strategy is for developing critical thinking and problem solving is encouraging students to use prior knowledge to tackle unfamiliar tasks. So we want to connect the content back to their lives. Learning isn't about taking small pieces of unrelated knowledge and remembering them. It's about connecting previous ideas, finding relationships within those smaller steps, and then looking for something familiar in the unfamiliar. So we want to put each student, a strategy 1, empower students to design their own solutions. We want to put each student in the driver's seat. This is an analogy most people can connect with, right? We don't want to be a passenger on the way we think. We don't want the student to be a passive player in the student thinking. We want to allow autonomy and empower students to make their own learning goals and following through. Technology really can open the door for students to be working on several different concepts at the same time versus the direct instruction model that has been historically in the classroom. This is evident in a lot of our curriculum design at Dreambox. We try to develop that student autonomy by giving them an element of choice. And then we want to use that prior knowledge to try to put them in situations to tackle that unfamiliar task, to make mistakes, and to see if they can find those big ideas.
Hey, we have a great question from the audience around when you talked about not monopolizing the classroom, you mentioned that there's a ratio of the students talking to teachers. What do you suggest a good ratio to strive for?
That's a great question. I think there's some flexibility in there, and it's found in what the outcome is. In early conceptual conversations, if you're early in a topic, I would say it's like a 4-to-1 ratio, right? Like every 4 minutes, it's peer-to-peer or peer dialogue with the educator, and it's 1 minute of the educator, the learning guardian facilitating those conversations. And that ideally would become more balanced contribution as you move along in a concept, but there isn't consistent like ratio that you're going to do every day. I think it has to do with the purpose and the outcome you're trying to achieve in the classroom. I would start with a 4-to-1 and see how that goes, and then, but you might have some students who it takes a while to get to that point, right? So maybe you want to start with it being 50-50, or but I think when students are driving the conversations and the teacher is there to help answer and enable further conversations between peers, that's the sweet spot. Great question too, by the way. And you know what? I'd also be curious to see follow up and hear back from people on how it went and how it can be improved. That's the purpose of a PLC, is to try something, look at the data, and iterate and improve on it. Okay, so self-directed learning. So we talked about putting each student in the driver's seat. Strategy 2 is we can set SMART goals. SMART goals are something that are very attainable, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. It's a way to get students to buy into their and be committed into the learning process. It makes them a partner in the learning and not just a receiver of it. And then again, build in opportunities for students to self-monitor and reflect. And this can be done many ways. It can be with journaling. Specifically in a math class, you can have math journaling. You can have math congresses or workshops where you get together and people talk about their work, and we question each other's in a respectful way, and we have engaged conversations. 3, treating the student as an equal contributor to the learning process. There's a whole lot of information that students need to share that teachers need to analyze in order to best meet the students' needs. And so we need to see them as equal partners in that progress. Okay, so effective communication. This was one of the major challenges when I was in the classroom. How do you communicate with the student, the parent, your peers, with your principals, with your math coach? There are a lot of different personas that we need to try to communicate, and it's all centered around the learner. So the first thing is it's two-way and it's ongoing. So how can you communicate with your students in a meaningful way? This is going to go back to listening to understand rather than listening to respond. We need to share that responsibility of who has the knowledge with our students, and we want to avoid just showing and telling. Instead, start conversations with connecting their learning to their lives, questioning, and engaging in math dialogue. Students would ask questions and sometimes get so frustrated when I would just ask a question back at them, right? They get in I see this with my 3-year-old. If she has a question, you know what question she's asking 99% of the time is why. Why? She wants to know why something works. And so I've tried to start saying, well, why do you think? What do you think about that? And there's somewhere along the way where students lose that curiosity, and I think they don't handle they haven't persevered through that frustration of being asked the question back. Why don't you tell me what you think about this strategy, or what patterns do you notice? That's the only way we can truly guide students to ownership of their ideas. We want them to generate the thinking, and we're there to help them. So we can be there to help them make those connections across what they're thinking and what the outcome is that we're going for. We cannot skip that connection piece. The strategy of asking questions and engaging the student in the thoughts so that they're generating the thoughts and we're not putting thoughts for them. Collaboration. man, this is a big deal, right? Everyone knows about collaboration. It's challenging, but it's something that is going to be there forever and has been there forever. So teaching collaboration is as simple as modeling effectively. And so we can do a self-reflection on how effective we are at collaborating with our peers, or collaborating with our parents, or collaborating with our students and our admins. We need to be able to collaborate with each other. This type of practice and example will reinforce that effective communication, and that will also pass on the importance of it. And what we'll see through that effective collaboration is that you'll see a higher expectation of a learning environment within the classroom. And the second strategy, at least underneath the collaboration piece, is to always honor and understand multiple points of view. At Dreambox, we have some company values. One of them is called benevolent friction, and the idea behind that is that we're hard on ideas, but we're soft on people. And that's a way to be, really what that's talking about, honor someone's perspective and their viewpoint, try to understand what they're talking about, and then work with them on that. You want to encourage students to share, and you want to encourage students to converse in a positive way that makes the rebuttal feel invited, and there's something that you can learn from it. So to help cultivate an environment of collaboration so that everyone feels heard and respected, and at the same time, even if that big idea isn't agreed upon, that this will foster a healthy conversation and culture. And then shift to a math culture in the classroom. Shift the thinking in the classroom around those tenets that we talked about. If we can focus on the persistence of hard work, students will focus on that as well. We need to view parents as partners in the learning process. Another opportunity I had when graduating, someone came in and did a presentation to the teacher cohort that I graduated with, and the question he asked was, whose responsibility is it to educate the child? And of course, all of us said, oh, it's ours, we're teachers, this is our job. And he said, no, you're a tool in this process. The responsibility is with the parents. Now, it's not as cut and dry as that. We know as educators, this is our passion. This is what we go to teach for. We want to change and affect the future of our students. But we need to remember that parents are partners in this process. So if we can nurture the academic mindset, it's going to begin at home as well. Most parents want to help, but often don't know how to help or feel intimidated in doing so. So if we can create strategies to integrate them into the learning process, that would help. As a teacher, we can make it a priority to partner with parents and supply resources to help them foster what they're thinking at home. This could be as simple as and I say simple loosely because I know our schedules are packed when we're teaching, but it could be as simply as a monthly newsletter summarizing what you did, what you're about to do. I've seen a lot of strategies where we try to send a schedule home with or a note or a math journal home each day and get the parent to sign it, showing that they've read it. Offered a preview of what was coming up in those newsletters. This would help jumpstart a conversation at home and provide an opportunity for parents to ask questions that help guide their child's learning. It's a subtle way to discourage parents from doing the math homework themselves or making excuses for their child, right? So, excuse me. And it's okay for parents to be confused, just like it's okay for students to be confused. That is part of the growth mindset, is that sometimes there's a large obstacle in the way. So how many of us have heard, I can't do a live poll, but maybe you can chime in on the chat. Have you ever heard a parent come into a parent-teacher conference and say, you know what, I was bad at math, so my child will be bad at math? We know that math knowledge is not a genetic thing that is passed on, right? This is, we know that we can show parents the importance of student struggle, of the discovery of their own understanding on their child's journey, and shift that mindset. Another strategy that a lot of people try, and very effectively, is the parent math nights. Preview some upcoming learning units and encourage parents to act as students would in the classroom. In a lot of ways, depending on the grade level, there's concepts and strategies that parents cannot relate to because it might not have been how they were shown, or they might not have went through that same learning process. So this would help them realize that the confusion is a natural feeling during the process of learning. It should be natural to be confused, and that it shouldn't discourage a student to the point they give up. It should, what we want to work with students is the encouragement to persevere. That confusion is very helpful in the learning process. There's an activity that I do with teachers when I'm doing live on-site, and it's around the base 6 place value system. And it really challenges teachers and parents, mainly adults, to remember how hard it is for a student to understand the base 10 place value system. You know, we teach them to count to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but all of a sudden there's this 1 in there again and there's a 0 somewhere else. And what does that mean? And how can we grapple with that? It's the reason that kids originally, if you ask them to write 110 when they're working on place value, they'll write 1, 0, 0, 1, 0 because they hear 2 numbers in that statement. So we want to encourage our parents to dive into the confusion and the perseverance and the struggle. One way or strategy that we deploy at Dreambox is that we try to send home information to enable those conversations. We have a parent dashboard that's intended to communicate with the parent. So it enables or bridges that gap between the parent, the teacher, the student, who are all playing a very critical role in that student's day-to-day math class. And then the last one to go over here is, mastering core academic content. We want to really, what does it really mean around the standards for mathematical practice and planning backwards, and how can we break standards down so they're accessible to all students? That is the challenge for teachers, right? That's our challenge. How do we meet the needs of 30 students 7 times a day, at least when I was teaching middle school? That's a lot of assessment, that's a lot of dialogue. But the important part that we want to pull along here is that if you can figure out how to backwards plan, meaning let's focus on the actions, the standards of mathematical practice, the thing that we want to assess. As an example, students looking for structure. Evaluate the lesson plans and activities in the classroom to see who actually is looking for the structure in the lessons and the conversations. Am I, as the educator, getting up and telling the student the structure in the lessons, or am I guiding the student and facilitating them to discovering it or recognizing it? And those patterns and recognition only come from an intentionally designed learning opportunity. Again, that's going to go back to the numbers that we choose, the context that we want students to be working on. All of it's geared around getting a student to the outcome. So if we know what the outcome is, we can plan backwards from that and then break that down around the standards of mathematical practice. Another thing is to use technology that promotes active learning. There is a fun video that showcases there's these 2 sisters, one's in like 3rd grade, one's in 1st grade. The 1st grade student is just learning the idea of subtraction, and the 3rd grade student or sister is asked to explain, teach her what's going on. And so she's trying to teach the way that she heard it. And it's, I forget the name right now, but if I find it, I'll post it. If I remember, we'll post it on the chat box so people can check it out. But it's really about, is technology empowering the student to be an active learner, or are we just digitizing the same age-old practice? Taking a worksheet and putting it online does not improve learning. It's the same activity digitized. We need to avoid pause and rewind, replacing slower and louder. And unfortunately, in a lot of the ed tech products, it's that same old direct instruction, and it's pause and rewind. You can see the video whenever you want. We need to improve on that. So we need to use technology that promotes the active learning piece. There is a book called Alive in the Swamp by Michael Fullen that is a great reference for how to evaluate technology and what to expect in technology when you're integrating it into your classroom. I highly suggest it for any PLC, your own individual professional growth. Again, that's Alive in the Swamp by Michael Fullen. I think it was Michael Fullen. But we'll throw that in the chat box too so people can take a look at that.
Hey, Dave, I actually wanted we have some questions coming in and just great conversation happening in chat around there's such a hyper focus on what does mastering or proficiency really look like of academic content, and how do you do that in a way, you know, if you think about all the pressure with end of year exams and all the extra tests that students are now having to take, how do you continue to ensure that students can have deep learning experiences knowing that there is this added pressure of testing?
Yeah, no, yeah, I appreciate that question, because I definitely don't want to come across naive around those pressures that educators and schools are faced with. Grant Wiggins is another treasure trove of information to take a look at. Grant Wiggins, you can find all his white papers online. So we all agree that we probably are testing too much in schools currently, right? We do the beginning of the year test, the middle of the year test, the end of the year test, the end of course test, all to find out how the test is going to be the test, right? So we kind of joke instead of infestation in your school, you have an intestation in your school. There's just so much testing going on. We need to look at it at a more macro level. So if you're a K-5 building, the goal is for the students, when they come in, to be proficient in 5th grade. The benchmark assessments along the way are important. But we all know you can't make 3 years growth, or it's not common to make 3 years growth in 9 months. So we need to be looking at across grade levels what proficiency means. Here's a good example, I think, about being age and grade agnostic when we're talking about end of course tests. Students learn about operations or addition and subtraction of decimals in 5th grade. It's a standard, I believe, in 5th grade for Common Core that they can add and subtract decimals fluently. Well, in 1st and 2nd grade are all the addition strategies and subtraction strategies for integers. But those strategies are directly applicable when we're talking about compensation or jumping to friendly numbers or constant difference. We spend a year or two working on addition and subtraction strategies of positive whole numbers, but we spend like 3 months or at best 6 weeks of students grappling with decimals. And most of the time it's because we're so quick to get to the outcome of maybe an addition algorithm, line it up and add it. But I guess the long-winded but should have been short version way of saying it is, we need to look at these standards and proficiency cross grade level. Look for the connections into, if you're a 5th grade teacher, look at the 4th and 3rd and 2nd grade standards and see the relationships that way. If we get hyper-focused on the year-to-year stuff, it just, you don't catch up. If we want to close the gap, you know, prevent the intervention, all those fun sayings. But the main thing I would say is we do need to give access to standards, but we need to be very conscious and cognizant of the previous grade level learning pathways that really support it. Yeah, so mastering core academic content, we talked about determining the end goal and breaking it down, and then really evaluate that technology that promotes that active learning. Take a chance and get on that Alive in the Swamp microphone, and it's got some good rubrics and suggestions of how to evaluate the technology and software you're using in your classroom and what is it actually impacting. Okay, so empowering educators to facilitate deeper learning by supporting with meaningful and relevant PD. Professional development. So many studies report that teachers know and believe about mathematics is directly connected to their instructional choices and procedures. Teachers need to have skills and knowledge to apply their philosophy, right? We need teachers competent in math, and however competent they are is definitely going to affect student achievement. Kathy Fosno had a piece that talked about, you think about all the thousands of hours we had as students learning math. And then we get hundreds of hours in our math competency or cohorts when we're getting our certification. 9 times out of 10, we're going to fall back into the experiences that we had much more of, the things that we were more comfortable with. So again, think of the thousands of hours you have as a student compared to the hundreds of hours you have in being preparing to a teacher. That's what we need to, that's the main thing we're trying to overcome when we're talking about competency. And currently only 29% of teachers are satisfied with their PD. There are a lot of variables here to unpack. I mean, doing PD on top of your job already is challenging, right? A lot of times it's a weekend or it's X amount of hours that you do in January or February or wherever you can line it up. It's with the best intentions that districts are trying to really increase PD, but just like the students, professional development needs to meet the teacher where they're at and help build towards a desired outcome. And when we view PD that way, when it becomes meaningful for educators, it will become more sticky and relevant. So one thing that we've really pushed at Dreambox around this is promoting professional development for educators based on student data. And we try to do it in small chunks. So if a student is struggling with partial products, I'll use that example as well. Let's say Jenny's in my math class, she's struggling with partial products. We surfaced a 15 to 20 minute professional development module for that fourth grade teacher or fifth grade teacher to work on for themselves about how they can better help a student who's struggling with partial products. This becomes more relevant and meaningful because they can implement it immediately. They don't have to wait until that situation arises. They can do it because it's happening right now. If you're interested in learning more about that deeper learning, there's a blog series to complement a white paper by Dr. Tim Hudson. Check it out. It's on, I think it's available on our website for dreambox.com. Maybe we can get that posted on there as well so people can take a look at that. But yeah, we need to get teachers more satisfied with PD. This is, as educators, we know learning is a lifelong trajectory and that we want to learn and continue to learn. So let's meet educators with the most important thing, which is meeting them where they're at. So the key principles for good PD, or I should say valuable PD, is going to be around making it relevant. And being relevant means it's something that educators need or meeting them where they're at. It needs to be interactive. Again, we just spent time talking about engineering learning opportunities where students are not the passengers in their learning. Neither are teachers. Professional development should be interactive. If we're going to an 8-hour session on a Saturday, and I know this session that we're doing is 45 minutes and I'm just talking, but we're trying to encourage the questions to create some interaction. That's the best way, that collaborative piece. It needs to be delivered by someone who understands my experience, and my experience being the personalized piece. When there's some empathy and a connection to it, it will be much stronger. It needs to be sustainable over time. It can't be something that's just inconsistent. We need to teach teachers as professionals because educators are professionals. PD at the adult level is very important, and we know educators get dragged through the mud in the media over and over if students or schools aren't making progress. And so we need to be conscientious of that teachers want to do well and want to improve, and they are professionals. And then the last bullet point is the delivery method needs to be flexible. What I mean by that, it needs to be accessible when the teacher has time to access it. If it's only available on Saturday from 8 to 4, that makes it challenging to be meaningful. But if it's accessible when the teacher needs it or has time or wants, that's when it's going to become much more valuable. So yeah, just a quick recap on those critical attributes. We talked about a strong math culture. If we just keep in mind all those assessments that you could do in the classroom around how many times does a student raise their hand with an idea versus raising their hand with an answer. Am I asking questions just for answers, or am I prompting students for ideas? We talked about some of those, the increased deeper learning opportunities, so engineering those, think about the numbers you choose and the context you choose, and really evaluate how that conversation in math class is going. A great question from someone around the ratio of monopolizing conversations. Just remember that's not static. That ratio is going to ebb and flow as you're working through a learning pathway. It'll be something that it's more important to measure so that you are discussing it than it is to actually hit that ratio. And then you can compare that against the learning outcomes of your students. And then intentional professional development, get and I'm sure admins are on board with this, and your math coaches and everyone else, get that professional development to be relevant to you becoming a better teacher, which in turn, the whole focus is around the student. You know, how can we improve student learning gains? Yeah, so if there's any questions or...
Yeah, there's been a lot of great engagement and questions, and if you haven't submitted yours yet, but you have them, please feel free to submit. We have a lot of questions actually from preschool teachers of what are some takeaways that an educator or a leader in a preschool environment could apply in building a math culture at that younger age?
Yeah, so one thing is just really to promote curiosity in those age, in that time frame. So much curiosity with the 4, 5, 6-year-old around things. You know, sometimes Sesame Street with the best intentions will show that numeral like 7 or 6 and so on. But really, we want students to grapple with the concept of objects before they jump to a symbol. We want them to be presented with situations of comparing amounts and develop that curiosity in if I add something to it, and the student's not going to think about adding something to it, right? But when you put them in a situation where, like, do you want 4 pieces of cake for dessert or 1? Right? There's some fun ways to engage students in curiosity and fairness that can help really promote that numeracy and understanding.
That's great. We have another question here kind of about how to encourage students to ask questions. So if you have a more tentative group of students or individual, what are some strategies to approach them and invite them to start being more engaged in asking questions?
So it's a cycle, right? So you don't want to just jump off a cliff and stick students in it right away. You want to meet with them. Maybe if you know the student's a little bit introverted, meet with them individually to see what questions they have and then encourage them to ask it. You can also provide different ways for students to ask questions in a community. There are a lot of technology resources that promote the anonymity of dialogue in a classroom. Now, ideally, it would be a culture or a system that invites and really breaks down that barrier, but we all know that's not the case for all students everywhere, and it definitely shouldn't be an extra barrier for those students. So I would say, 1, meet with them individually, maybe work with them strategically in smaller groups, and then 2, provide avenues for anonymity in the questioning or the idea. And there's a lot of technology that enables that.
That's great. As a district leader, what are some takeaways that a district leader should have in terms of shaping professional development and structuring it in a way that supports educators and also teachers so that they can really enable those deeper learning opportunities?
Yeah, I'd say the first one is to inventory your peers, your educators that you're working with, to find out what's most meaningful for them, and then go find the resources that meet those needs. There are a ton of great resources to meet individual needs. You know, putting a K-5 building all in the same professional development is as crazy as putting all K-5 students in the same math class and teaching the same thing. Educators should be able to sign up for access to the most meaningful one that will impact their classroom or their professional growth, and ideally on their schedule. But definitely that partnership, if an advisor or supervisor, I should say, is monopolizing the conversation between the teachers and themselves, it's the same thing. We need to be partnerships in this.
That's great. We also have some questions about what are some good examples of effective technology. I think you kind of mentioned like the SAMR model and things like that. So maybe you could talk about how we use technology with intention based off of what outcomes we're trying to achieve. Yeah,
the SAMR model, just real quick, is a measurement of, is technology a substitution for a task you're already doing? Is it augmenting a task, making it better? Is it modifying something, or is it redesigning or redefining something? So an effective one is going to be, I believe, our professional development, the way we surface it is redefining the way educators can access professional development. It gets triggered based on student evidence. So when a student is answering a question, it's not just about being right or wrong. It's about how they answered it. Take that student that's working on 10 structure and we give them a 10 frame and they move one over at a time, we can communicate to educators that that's one-to-one correspondence, and the next step in there is really about developing number trust in 5 structure and 10 structure and so on. Having that level of insight into what the student's thinking really enables a teacher to scale. Every teacher wants to watch every student answer the problem and how they answer it and observe it and provide feedback. Technology has the opportunity to step in and give educators that data analyzed and prompt them or encourage them with the strategies they would use in those situations.
Definitely. In terms of students that might already feel like they're struggling with math or might have special needs, what are some ways that you can really encourage and motivate them to start building a love of math?
So yeah, that's a great question, and I think not only for that group of students or learners, but really for all, we need to get to the point where math is understood as it is messy, it is going to make mistakes. The goal is not to see how fast you can get something done. It is about thinking and collaborating in a community and sharing your thoughts and providing feedback for other people's thoughts. Doing math and being a mathematician are really the aspiration. We need to think about what a fluent reader, what does a fluent reader look like, right? Like they're able to comprehend what they're reading and they're able to build on it and analyze it and argue and question and make inquiries. It's the same thing in math. It's not about just one outcome that you're told. It's about looking at a problem and seeing it very differently than maybe someone else does, but that's okay. You can communicate and talk about it and figure out different big ideas.
That's great. So we have a question here from Sheena around collaboration. So how do you, suggest or recommend allowing students to pick their own groups or peers when collaborating versus trying to define those yourself as an educator?
Yeah, no, there's some funness in that, right? Like you get the kid that says, I don't want to be in that person's group. Someone gets left out. I think there's an element of surprise in there, that autonomy. There's some comfort level. I would gauge it by where the student is at on that collaboration pedagogy or spectrum. If it's a student that you're just trying to get kind of to participate in these collaboration pieces, that might be a great way. Like, hey, so-and-so, or they choose the group they're in, and they're able to collaborate on it. I think when you have that end measurement in mind, you can evaluate or assess whether that was a good way to do it. I think variety is good, having a randomization every now and then, put everyone's name in a hat, split them out, and it's a randomness. I think the intentionality also has a place, a very strategic grouping based on data, not only data that comes from software like Dreambox, but more importantly, the data that comes from your day-to-day observation of your students in your classroom. So all of those feed into it. I think there is a place for a student choosing their groups, but there's also a place for strategically choosing them and randomly.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and also to David for giving a lot of amazing information in this webinar. I hope everyone is taking away as many aha moments as I am with some new strategies to support deeper learning and really empower a strong math culture. And I put a link in the chat box, but David actually will be going more in depth into how to build a strong math culture in a webinar in September. So we hope you'll be able to join us for that one as well. I now wanted to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Dreambox, since we've been talking about it a lot today. So like you at Dreambox, we are dedicated to improving learning outcomes for all students by empowering educators to more effectively close those gaps and facilitate meaningful learning. So to achieve this, we have to ensure that every student feels supported, is engaged, and believes they can be successful by building confidence. Dreambox is the only K-8 digital math program that's powered by students, built by and for educators, and is independently proven to positively impact student achievement. To accelerate the change that leads to the learning gains that we're all learning for, we have to address the needs of our administrators, our teachers, our students, and our greater learning community. And we can do this in a number of ways, by ensuring that all of our educators and students have access to a curriculum that is proven to be effective by third parties, We also need to build teacher agency and confidence in math with content-specific PD. We also want to provide an innovative digital curriculum that addresses low math scores due to lack of deep student conceptual understanding. And finally, as we've heard, we really need to support teachers with tools that help them differentiate instruction and address the individual needs of their students. The evidence to support Dreambox has been shown in a number of studies. Here's an example of a third-party study that was completed by the Center for Education Policy and Research by Harvard University. The study demonstrated that students who used Dreambox for 60 minutes a week improved 58% more than the growth norms on the NWEA math assessment. While not all schools can allocate 60 minutes a week to a math product like Dreambox, schools that use Dreambox for just 20 minutes a week saw students improve 19% more than their growth norms. Dreambox also is built around rigorous, engaging lessons along coherent learning pathways. So both during and between lessons, Dreambox dynamically adapts and differentiates in real time based not only on students' answers, but also how they actually solve the problems. By automatically and continually supporting students at their just right level, Dreambox is a powerful partner in every classroom, school, and district. As mentioned earlier, Dreambox is powered by students, but it's also built by and for educators. Along with actionable reporting and tools that empower classroom differentiation for all learners, Dreambox is giving teachers content-specific professional development that's relevant to the math their students are learning. And also, we provide administrators with insights about how all students are progressing. There's also a lot of tools embedded in our dashboard for teachers that enable those strong connections between home and school. This is a powerful combination of tools that give teachers the support and confidence they need to make the best instructional decisions for every student, while also giving administrators the insights they need to positively impact student outcomes across the district. So David also talked a lot about how to empower educators with professional learning that's meaningful and relevant. So a lot of research and publications from leading organizations such as NCTM and Learning Forward have suggested that when educators have a deeper understanding of the math concepts they're teaching, their students have higher achievement. So here at Dreambox, our professional learning services are really designed to give personalized professional development plans that are aligned to the instructional goals of educators and school leaders. Our PD focuses on helping educators deepen their knowledge of math content and also increases the efficacy of their instructional practice in the classroom so that they can better meet the needs of each student. And finally, there's a lot more information available and free resources from Dreambox. There's a URL there. You can go to dreambox.com/white-papers if you want more information. And you can also feel free to request a demo there. There's a button on the website as well if you're interested in talking to our team here at Dreambox for more in depth. So with that, thank you all for joining us. And again, a huge thank you to David. We hope you'll join us again for our next one in September around building a math culture. And if you haven't gotten your CE certificate yet, if you're an edWeb member, yours will be posted to you by the end of the next business day. If you've logged in with your email address, we'll email you links to the CE certificate form recording and how to get added resources. Reminder that you only need to take the CE quiz if you've dialed in by phone, are watching as a group, or viewing this as a recording. And there's the link. Make sure you join our Leadership 3.0 community for a lot more webinars each month that we offer. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.